It's true. I did not have a face-to-face by Zoom with Mr. Ziegler until the 17th, but I was now aware by the time of the trial of his methodology. It was not clear in his notes. The prosecutor interviewed him or asked some questions and relayed that information to me. That left those diagonal marks fully explainable, only explainable by the impact testing.
And if this is the opposite.
Hang on, Your Honor, I have a request. If we were doing this hearing in person, what would be happening right now is Mr. Spiro would be showing me a copy of the transcript that he's referring to, because the court would require him to do that. Would it be okay if can he email me the trial transcript that he's referring to? I have no idea what he's referring to, and neither does Mr. Haig.
Well, okay. So let me just say this, okay? If a prosecutor is listening to testimony that a prosecutor knows is false, a prosecutor has an obligation to correct it, okay? That's the first thing I'm going to say. And the prosecutor in this case knows full well that what Mr. Haig, whether it's faulty memory or intentionally, is saying is incorrect, because he has, over the course of the last 3 weeks, confirmed many, many different times that the only time he changed his opinion was a week ago. So this testimony that he's giving...
Stop, both of you. You're going to continue. You're going to continue. You're not going to get the transcript. Okay. I believe he's testifying from a transcript, but I'm going to assume it's in good faith that he's using the quoting from the court. So we're going to move on. So go ahead.
When you said that at fourth day of the trial at 15 to 18, when you said that statement at Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's trial, nobody corrected that statement, correct?
I don't even recall testifying to that, so I can't answer that.
Okay, but you don't recall anybody correcting it either, do you?
Certainly not.
And you know about that, what your son Mike testified about in front of the grand jury regarding this issue. Do you know that?
I don't have a recollection of it. I read it at one point in time, but I don't remember any of it.
And when later in time, after the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, you testified, you sat down for a pretrial interview in the Alec Baldwin case, right? You remember, because you said you remembered Miss Clark. You didn't remember anything else, but you remembered seeing Miss Clark for the pretrial interview. You remember that?
I do.
And you knew it was important to tell the truth?
Of course.
And Miss Clark even told you, make sure you tell the truth, right?
I don't remember that.
Okay. And at that time, you said that the sear looked as expected and normal, right?
I did.
Okay. And I don't know, you said you don't remember that pretrial interview.
Well, I do. Excuse me, Alex. I do now, because I was sent a copy of it. I didn't have one, and I viewed it this morning. Much of it came back to me.
Do you know that that's improper, sir, while you're on the witness stand?
I'm just trying to help you out here.
I appreciate that. And if you just answer my questions honestly, that'll be the best help for both of us. But I'm asking you a different question, which is, do you know whether or not that's improper?
What's improper?
That while you're on cross-examination, you are not to receive materials from one party and do anything with them. Do you understand that?
No, I don't. I wanted to know, since I couldn't remember that interview, what the questions and answers were. Simple as that.
And do you remember, we'll go back to that and we'll put a pin in that. Well, let me ask you this. You've been an expert witness for 50-some years?
Yes, I have.
And you don't know that while you're under cross-examination, you're not to be speaking to the party calling you and getting information from them? You don't know that rule?
I'm unaware of what you speak.
Okay. Well, do you remember live in front of you at that interview, the defense learned for the first time that there were additional reports involving this case after your initial report in this case? Do you remember that?
I do now.
Okay. And it happened live in front of you because you said something, right, spontaneously, that caused the defense to realize, oh my goodness, there are additional reports. You remember that happening, right now?
Yes, I do.
And you have said in this courtroom that your understanding from the prosecutors was, and I quote, that the reason we didn't have the additional reports was a, quote, breakdown in communication. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that specific line of questioning. All I know is it got resolved by the end of that interview.
Actually, it didn't get resolved by the end of that interview. Because don't you know that later, after more spontaneous statements by your son, we learned that there was a third report that casted doubt on everything you all had been saying in front of Miss Gutierrez-Reed and is at her trial and in front of the grand jury and at your previous pretrial interview, which is why you got called back. Which is why you got called back.
Objection, it calls for
Mr.
speculation.
Spiro, ask questions. Please stop testifying. Thank you.
Did you learn at a later point whether the third report was eventually turned over to the defense? Did you learn that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And I think you started to say this earlier, but you volunteered that the reason that you wrote the third report was because of this anticipation of cross-examination. Is that your testimony, sir?
No, it was anticipation that a colleague, an AFTI member, or maybe a private person suitably qualified, would see some of the many, there are over 3,900 photographs that Mike and I took, would see those marks and wonder, what did Luke think about those? Did he notice them? No, I put it in that report. That third August 31st report.
Right. And there are certain things that are de minimis that you could be asked about on cross-examination, or a word you could change in a report. This to you and your assessment of what another expert would think was sufficient for you to do a third report. Fair?
It was a stimulus for that, whether it was needed or not. I just felt I've been down this trail so many times and I don't know what a person did. I can't tell necessarily from their worksheets. This case is an example. So photo documentation notes are really important. And there are lots of pictures of this reassembled trigger and sear to ultimately include photomicrographs of the working surface, the thing we've been talking about now for half an hour.
And your presumed oversight, you thought, would allow this to go in an untoward direction. That was your phrase. Presumed oversight, if you didn't make this report, could go in an unfortunate direction during your cross-examination, right?
I'll have to reread it if it says that. I don't recall.
You can you demonstrate for me, prior to Mr. Ziegler's beating, which we're about to turn to, that happened a week ago, can you just demonstrate for me how you understood the hammer test to be?
Sure. The revolver was mounted in a fixture. That's great. So it isn't going anywhere. Hammer at full cock position, and then he's freehand swinging a rawhide mallet. He couldn't remember which one or what the weight of the head was, multiple times against the spur of the hammer. He conceded that there was no way, he couldn't be sure it was perfectly front to back in this axis. And then it finally failed. And when he took it apart, the sear tip was broken off.
And after your meeting with Mr. Ziegler, can you explain to me what your understanding was of the mallet test?
I didn't have a meeting with him. I saw him on a Zoom arrangement. And the questions had been asked, I think, by Ms. Morrissey. And I asked at some point, could I clarify that? And I was allowed to do that.
And your understanding after that meeting, how did it change in terms of how he hit the gun with the mallet?
I never knew exactly how the gun was mounted and how it was struck. It wasn't in his notes.
That's not exactly my question. I'm going to try again. How did what he described, can you now demonstrate for me what your understanding is now?
I just did. The
Well, no.
delivered in an unorganized way. It wasn't in a fixture like a pendulum. I built a device that will do this so it keeps the angle perfectly straight and we can know the actual force of impact. Don't know any of those things concerning his rawhide mallet test.
Right, I'm now getting confused. I had asked you before what your understanding was prior to meeting with Mr. Ziegler. Okay. Right. I'm now, pardon?
Go ahead. Sorry, thought you were through.
I'm now asking what your understanding was after you met with Mr. Ziegler. And you don't like the word meet for some reason, that you saw him on Zoom and spoke to him. Okay.
Object to the form of question. He keeps asking like 2 and 3 questions in one question. Can we just have a simple question, not a compound question?
If Mr. Hague is confused, he can ask for clarification, but let's try to limit the compound. Thank you.
You understand what I'm asking you, Mr. Hague?
I believe so. I had an understanding from a previous interview of which I was not a party, but heard the written results or noted results from an interview of Mr. Ziegler by, I believe, by Kerry Morrissey. He was using a rawhide mallet and a freehand motion. When we had that Zoom meeting on the 17th, that's what I wanted to clarify. There are ways to fix a mallet in a pendulum-like fixture. So I'm pretty sure at this point, we're talking about a freehand swing of unknown impact at an unknown angle. And that was verified in the June 17th Zoom meeting.
And that's when you first learned that, fair?
Learned that a refinement of his impact testing as to how he did it.
And it was after that time that you took back your conclusions in the August 31st report, correct?
No, I think by the time of trial, I had enough information that of the impact testing that was the only logical explanation for the diagonal aspect of the marks on the working surface of the broken sear.
You, when you sat down with virtually Mr. Ziegler, Miss Morrissey gave you some dates, right?
I'm sorry, Miss Morrissey
gave you some dates to choose from to sit down with him, right?
To ask questions, yes.
Right. And did you get the impression that he even knew he was showing up to that meeting to see you or to see Miss Morrissey and you?
It became pretty apparent that I
Objection, speculation. He's asking Mr. Hague to speculate about what Mr. Ziegler thinks.
It's a proper question. I'm asking him if he had an impression as to.
It's not a proper.
It's not asked correctly, but it sounds like Mr. Hague is going to answer something about being a parent. So let's let Mr. Hague answer that question.
Yes, it was pretty apparent. I could see him, he could see me, and he gestured as to how he swung the mallet, the rawhide mallet, struck the hammer.
Okay, so you were there in this meeting, and it was about an hour. Is that fair?
Probably.
Okay. There was no parts of guns at this meeting where you all were looking at parts of guns under microscopes and things like that, right?
Not at his end. I may have brought mine for a demonstration. I don't know.
You don't remember?
I don't remember if I produced mine. He certainly didn't. I remember him sitting in an office with a headset on.
Okay. There was no additional, let's just leave it at this. There was no additional testing done at this hour-long Zoom meeting, right?
You're right.
And can you show me how he demonstrated doing it at this meeting?
Well, I don't have a mallet here with me, and my mallet isn't rawhide.
Well, just approximate. You don't need to. Just show me the motions that you remember him showing you at the meeting.
I'll do it again. Hammer fully cocked, gun is mounted, can't go anywhere. It's in a fixture of some kind, similar to a device called a ransom rest. I know I asked him if he had a ransom. It's a brand name, ransom rest. But no, it's by another company. And then he just showed with his hand, swinging the mallet freehand, no particular measurement of the angle or the impact force, nothing quantitative about his testing. A totally subjective assessment as to whether he was hitting it straight on or not. And I think he said after several blows, it broke.
Did he tell you how many?
He may have. I can see some evidence in the step on the hammer at least twice before it broke.
but I'm asking not from what you saw, but did you ask him how many times did you hit it?
Probably, but we'd have to go back and listen to it. Multiple times is all I was interested in, and then it broke.
Is there a recording of this meeting?
I don't have one.
Do you know whether one was recorded?
I do not.
Do you know whether anybody took any notes?
I don't know.
And can you just demonstrate how he showed you his, I take it that the main difference here is that you had an understanding about sort of a perpendicular strike with the mallet, but that you come to now say you learned that it could have been human error or what have you, or what he shows you more of an angle. Can you just demonstrate that for me so I can understand that?
Once again, let me hold it up this way. Bottom to top, let's just call that parallel. If a blow came in from this way, parallel with the long axis of the barrel, as opposed to coming in at some slight angle. And he conceded that if there was no fixture, no special apparatus to deliver the hammer blows, the mallet blows, perfectly parallel to the axis of the bore, to the spur of the hammer.
Okay, and that was different from your prior understanding. How?
No, I didn't have, in August 31st and before, I didn't have an understanding from his notes, and I didn't feel it appropriate to call or talk to him since he was a witness in the criminal matter with Gutierrez-Reed.